Welcome to the golf industry uncut. On-demand audio for the world of golf like never before. Exclusively on THP Radio on the Hackers Paradise Network. Now, here's your host, JB.
Welcome, everyone, to THP Radio. I'm your host, JB, and today we have a special episode of the show called The Golf Industry Uncut. Each episode of Uncut will feature one of the brilliant minds of the golf industry, and they'll be placed in the hot seat to discuss equipment, technology, and the entire golf industry landscape. This week, we have a special show where we welcome Dominic Chu from CNBC to the show. Are you ready to step into the hot seat?
Oh, I'm ready, JB. I'm fire away, man.
THP Radio is your new twist on on-demand audio in the world of golf. And the Golf Industry Uncut is your complete access to the equipment world that you were craving the info on. The way the show works is easy. Once the record button is pressed, there's no editing done until the show ends, so you hear it all. Our only rule is a simple one. Every guest must be accessible, either on the THP forum or through social media. So before we dive right into it, can you tell our listeners where they can find you on Twitter?
Sure. You can find me at the Domino, TheDomino on Twitter.
There you have it. We're going to jump right into it. Now, I know you're a pretty big golf fan. How did you get started in golf, and, how did your enjoyment of the game blossom?
It's great. I love the game of golf, and I think anybody who follows me along on my network, CNBC, or anywhere else kind of knows my love of the game. I started off at, I guess, what would be a rather late age by today's standards. I was probably about 14 when I started playing the game of golf. I was just about a freshman in high school, and it was only because my parents, specifically my dad, got me into it. He kind of wanted to get more involved with the game himself. He was doing a little bit for business here and there, so he decided to get my brother and I both into it. But a lot of fond memories growing up here. I enjoy the game much more now because I don't feel as though I'm as dependent on it. When I was in high school, I played high school golf. I played in varsity team for like 4 years, was the team captain for 2 of them. And it almost felt like a chore for me. I enjoyed doing it, but I kind of likened it to playing the piano or something where you had to practice all the time. And I remember growing up, going to church with my family and then getting out of church and then going to the driving range to have a lesson and then spending another hour or 2 after the lesson hitting balls with my dad watching me. So the game of golf started for me in my teens, and I still love it today.
Now, with your schedule at CNBC delivering us, news, what it seems like all day, every day on the finance market, which, by the way, is on the TV behind me, how often do you get to play?
I don't get to play as much as I want to play. I would probably say, there were times when I was probably in my single years, I would probably say I probably got a good amount in. I probably like 40 or 50 rounds a year in. Now married.
Were you living in New York at the time?
I was living in New York at the time. So if you can imagine squeezing that in when about 5 or 6 months of the year is snow covered, I guess you had to kind of cram in a lot of golf during the season. And that's typically between around April and you can push it towards maybe the Thanksgiving mark, but that was basically your season to get the golf in that you wanted to in the Northeast. But, I'm pretty happy with the amount of golf I played. The last few years, I probably got around maybe 20 or 25 rounds in per year. This year, though, however, year to date, what is it, May 9th right now, and May whatever it is, I've already gotten in like 9 rounds, I think, so far this season. So I'm on a pretty good pace right now.
That's pretty impressive. Did some of those come traveling, I'm assuming?
Some of it did come traveling. I do try to bring my sticks whenever I can. For work, it's tough. If you're a journalist and you work in news, business news, or any other kind of news, oftentimes the travels that kind of take you to these kind of cool places, you don't often get to enjoy a lot of them. You're there. It's all business. You kind of fly in. You're only there for a few hours, sometimes a day or less, and you fly home. So very few times you can kind of go out and get some golf in. But I have had some vacation days. I've had some opportunities to kind of get some rounds in locally, and hopefully this summer we'll travel somewhere.
Now, for those that haven't followed Dominic's meteoric rise in his career, he came from Bloomberg after working on the finances, and he went to the Andy Bernard School at Cornell. When you were at Bloomberg, you were covering sports business. How closely do you follow the business side of the golf industry now?
I follow it closely only because it's of a huge interest. It's massive to me. The whole game is something I love a lot. And for me, when I was a reporter at my prior network, when I was at Bloomberg, I was tasked with covering a lot of the sports business stories. For me, it was great to cover stories about baseball, football, hockey, tennis, or whatever else it was. But in my heart, I was always a golfer. So I found particular joy in events I got to cover that revolved around the game of golf. And because of that, I kind of took a keen interest in the business side of things because it was my beat, right? I worked for a business news network. I continue to work for a business news network now. And for a lot of those reasons, I wanted to find stories that would resonate with our audience, a business, financial markets geared audience. And that kind of took me a little bit perhaps away from as much of the personalities or the typical media coverage of the golf business towards, the numbers behind it, the golf courses, the country clubs, who owns them, how are they doing, how are rounds played shaping up, and how is the golf equipment business doing? Can we tell anything about our economy because people are spending more or less money on buying golf gear? And let's put it frankly, golf is very much a discretionary spending item. It's not like food or water or shelter. We don't have to spend on golf. So when we do spend on golf, it shows that we are making an elective, a decision that we want to spend our excess money after we've eaten and after we've clothed ourselves to play the game. And I think that tells a lot about the economy, about how well the game is doing overall.
It's interesting. I specifically remember two segments you did, and I'm going kind of off topic here, at your prior network. One was on Jay-Z selling his stake, which was big news, even though his stake amounted to less than 1%. And your story on Tiger Woods returning to the Masters and what it did to ticket sales. And you could see like this joy in it about it. Now, you said you follow the equipment industry. Does that mean, with some of these companies being public, your Nikes, your Callaways, TaylorMade overseas through Adidas, are you following the TaylorMade story at all with the, Adidas Golf?
I am. And it's been something, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I mean, the golf equipment is one that's kind of seen all different kinds of cycles over the past 5 or 10 years or so. And it always kind of ebbs and flows. This time around, it was a huge deal only because TaylorMade is probably one of the more well-known names in terms of the world of golf, and specifically for golf equipment. The fact that they are still owned by Adidas, the German sports giant right now, but are looking to possibly sell it is interesting only because you talk about a game that's had no shortage of perhaps less positive headlines over the past few years. I mean, we know since the financial crisis, since the Great Recession, some people call it, the game of golf has taken a hit. I mean, people are not spending as much money and as much time out there playing the game of golf as they used to back in its heyday. A lot of that has to do with people making different decisions about how they want to spend their money, and it's rightfully so. I mean, golf is certainly not as important as some other things in life. What I would say, though, is on the equipment side of things with TaylorMade, it'll be interesting to see who ends up kind of buying it, or if Adidas is shopping it around, who are they kind of pitching it to? Are they pitching it to other equipment companies? Are they pitching it to other kind of more brand aggregators? A lot of the companies out there these days you may not know the name of the company, but they own a lot of brands. So do those brands get assimilated by somebody else? And then what ends up happening to those brands that they've kind of spent a lot of time putting together? I mean, between TaylorMade and Ashworth and Adams Golf and whatnot, Adidas has been a big brand on its own for much longer than TaylorMade's been around. But it'll certainly play out interestingly in the way that the capital markets view how much TaylorMade golf itself is actually worth.
It is interesting that you brought that up because we saw something similar a few years ago without the crisis side of it when Acushnet was sold, and it was sold kind of quietly, overseas brand picked it up. It was business as usual, nothing changed, but they didn't have the dip in sales that TaylorMade did. So it is a rather interesting story.
Well, it's also interesting you bring that up because it was overseas investors, as part of that consortium that took over Acushnet, what we know as Titleist, right? And there was a private equity component to it. And it'll be curious to see whether or not the private equity side of the business, that is to say people who buy up businesses, fix them up, and then sell them back to the public, whether they are some of the people that are perhaps part of the mix here in terms of, who would be interested in buying a company like TaylorMade Golf.
If I was a gambling man, and I am, I would bet on that statement right there.
Well, it's certainly not. It's not as much pressure as a $20 Nassau, but I think that is true. It might be interesting.
Before we continue, I want to remind everybody that they can discuss these topics and all the topics on the THP forum with thousands of golfers every single day. And of course, you can follow, discuss, debate, and interact with Dominic on Twitter @the Domino. It's spelled just like it sounds. And if you include THP Golf and the hashtag THP Radio, we can include future questions on the show if Dominic decides to come back. So we were talking about golf equipment and you being a golfer with record number of rounds so far this year. What's in the golf bag right now? Run us through your golf bag of your choice of gear.
Oh, what's in the bag? All right. Well, I've got a TaylorMade bag right now. Well, my bag physically, if you want to know what the bag make is, I have a Sun Mountain. You guys remember those old KG2s, right?
Of
so I have a KG2 bag. I'm not sure if they still make them anymore, but I love the bag, so I've kept it. My bag is a Sun Mountain bag, and then my gear is pretty much exclusively TaylorMade right now. So I'm playing an R15 driver, got a Fubuki shaft on that one, stiff. I'm playing an Aero Burner 3-wood. From there, I've got an Aero Burner 3 hybrid, an R15 4 hybrid, RSI 1s for the 5, 6, and 7 irons, RSI TPs for the 8, 9, and wedge, and then the EF wedges for my sand, gap, and lob wedges. And I play a Spider putter right now. So a lot of TaylorMade in my bag for right now.
You rattled through that like you're a member of our forum, I gotta say.
Well, I take my equipment very seriously, JB.
Speaking of equipment, for those that are listening right now, tune in to the THP forum and on Twitter. We're going to announce a contest where you can win the upgrade, as I'll call it, or the newer version of Dominic's driver he just listed. We will give away an M1 or an M2, your choice for listening in. We'll have the details on that coming up soon. Now, you mentioned that you travel to play, and if you're on vacation and it's not a work trip, you bring your gear with you. What are some of the favorite courses you've played in the last few years?
Oh, I mean, there are so many great ones out there, and I hate to be too inclusive in these lists because it almost certainly means I'm going to exclude or forget to name somebody out there. But I mean, I'm a native Californian, JB, so I grew up in Northern California where I played a lot more golf than I do in the Northeast because the weather permits that kind of thing. I mean, being a Northern California guy, I obviously love a lot of the Monterey Peninsula courses. I mean,
beautiful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was a teenager, my father, we kind of saved up enough money as a family. We took a road trip down there, and we lived about 2 hours east of Monterey. And so we went and played. We did the whole, Pro-Am circuit back then. It was Pebble Beach, it was Spyglass Hill, and it was Poppy. And, those courses were fantastic. I had a memorable experience. I remember we took a caddy out at Pebble, and his name was Hawk. It was fantastic. It was just like in the video games. And so that holds a special place in my heart. I love it. I love it out there. At the same time, we lived just south of Napa, so, a lot of nice courses up there. Eagle Vines is up there right now. I think it's a great track up there. Silverado, obviously the one that a lot of people know in Northern California. But, now that I live on the East Coast, I do a lot of the great golf that I do mostly on the Atlantic Seaboard. And so I have a buddies trip every year, a bunch of my guys out there. I got roped into a group that goes down to either the Carolinas or Maryland every year in the fall. And so it's typically the Pinehurst area. Love Pinehurst number 2. Got to play that. It kicked my butt, no doubt. So Donald Ross certainly had my number that day.
He has Hilton numbers Head, for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, and he's in addition to the numbers, he calls those courses down at Pinehurst, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, my wife and I, we love Hilton Head, so, we love going down there to see Pines and playing, over at Hilton Head. And for me, when I was probably younger, did a lot of work done on me, I guess, and in Wisconsin, up at Black Wolf Run and Whistling Straits. It was probably one of the more memorable golf trips I've ever had. Another buddy's trip out there. It was because of the cheese curds. I've never had a cheese curd before I went to Wisconsin, but it was pretty awesome. They are amazing, and so it's pretty interesting that the whole idea of being able to go up to Wisconsin, playing Whistling Straits, playing Black Wolf Run, playing all those courses out there, it was pretty awesome. So that was memorable, and of course, Kiowa, the Ocean Course, is always a great one. Doral down in Miami. did a lot of work in Scottsdale. So, there's a lot of courses across this great country. The one place I haven't gone, JB, that I really want to go, it's on my bucket list right now. A lot of people have done it, but I have not, is the whole Bandon Dunes thing.
That's going to be feeling you were going there.
Next on my list. You'd think as a native Californian I would have been up there by now, but my travels have just never gotten me out to that part of Oregon.
Pack your rain gear.
Yeah, exactly, right.
It's time for the Fire Away segment. 10 topics.
All right.
First thing that comes to your mind, no question about golf. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Best sandwich and from where?
Oh, that's tough. I would say a Reuben. I would say a Reuben from just about any deli in New York City. I'm a huge corned beef, but corned beef Reubens. That's my pick.
Best show on NBC right now that you were not featured in?
Well, obviously the NBC family of networks has a whole bunch of programs, and specifically on my network, CNBC, I do mostly our dayside stuff, so that's like during market hours. I got to tell you that a lot of our primetime offerings I'm not on, but are pretty fun to watch. $1 Billion Buyer, Tillman Fertitta, he's the guy behind one. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, and then The Profit with Marcus Lemonis. I love, restaurant startup. I love seeing stories about businesses and how they can kind of grow to be bigger. I mean, I come from a small business family myself. That's what my dad did. And so I always like to see like the entrepreneurial side of things, and we get that a lot on CNBC Prime.
The last movie you've seen in the theater?
Wow, the last movie I saw in a theater was probably, it's been a long time. It was probably like one of those superhero movies, maybe like Captain America, Winter Soldier. I say that now only because I want to go see the new Captain America Civil War. I love, the Avengers, anything Marvel, I'm a huge fan. So, like the X-Men movies, anything that has a Marvel character, I'm pretty much going to go watch.
You have a Last Supper in New York. Where are you eating?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, you're talking about, New York City has got so many restaurants, more restaurants per capita than just about anywhere else in the world. All right, I'll tell you this. If you're looking for steak, I would say the Porterhouse at Del Frisco's is fantastic. If you're looking for Italian, Il Mulino, if you can get in there, is a great Italian food. And if you're looking for something more on the Asian side of things, Morimoto is fantastic.
You wake up in the morning, you grab your cell phone. What's the first thing you look at? Besides on my website, of course.
Besides THP? Absolutely. I mean, the first thing I'm probably going to be doing is checking my emails right off the bat. I work in news, so I got to kind of stay abreast of what's going on. A lot can happen overnight, especially in financial markets, because, we're not the only ones in the U.S. here who have stuff going on. So I want to see what's going on in Asia, what's happened there, what's kind of starting to happen in Europe. So I check emails and, of course, all the social media stuff. Immediately log on to Twitter, immediately log on to Facebook and Instagram, that sort of thing, LinkedIn, and kind of check what's going on.
Best pizza toppings?
I love a big combo with everything on there, but if I had to kind of pick maybe just a couple of them, I would probably go with onions and sausage for me.
That's actually my wife's favorite.
All right, I like it. I like it.
Best travel city for food that's not your home state or the state you're from? Oh,
that's tough. All right, so I guess technically speaking, I'm from California, so I can't say San Francisco because I'm from out there.
Correct.
I don't technically work in New York, but I could say New York is a great city for food. I'd say in my travels, though, I love barbecue. And so I thought the food in Charleston, South Carolina was fantastic. And I also thought the food in Nashville, Tennessee was fantastic as well.
I'll veer off topic and bore our listeners. Charleston food, did you eat at Snob and Poogan's Porch?
We did not. We did, but that was one on the list because we solicited recommendations. We did not make it there, but I had more than my fill of pimento cheese, anything, and a lot of good Carolina barbecue. It was definitely good.
Good stuff. Name one thing that you consider a guilty pleasure of yourself. That came out wrong, but you know where I'm going.
A guilty pleasure. You mean besides the game of golf?
Of course.
I have a thing for bourbon. I've developed a taste for bourbon over the course of the past few years here, and I got to blame specifically. We have one of our senior producers here, this woman Shannon Siemens, who's from Louisville, Kentucky, and who we've covered stories together on the Kentucky Derby, on the bourbon industry in Kentucky. So I think if I had a guilty pleasure for right now, it'd probably be, me going for some whiskey.
That's actually a good one. We did this thing. We have a friend, TaylorMade Golf, ironically, your bag, who made fun of me for having an old fashioned on the podcast. And
hey, that's a great cocktail. It's
a great cocktail. Okay, so you're traveling as you do all the time.
Yes.
You have a choice of two things. You get the upgrade through your miles or whatever it is, but you have to deal with an hour delay. Okay. Or you get to fly out on time, but you're the last seat on the plane in the middle. Which do you choose?
Oh, that's easy. I'll take the upgrade and the 1 hour delay. I will take you should know this, JB. I'm a traveler. If you put me in any moving vehicle whatsoever, it doesn't matter if it's a plane, train, automobile, whatever it is. If I'm moving, chances are I will be passed out taking a nap within the first 10 or 15 minutes or so. So the middle seat in the back of a plane is not terrible, but I'd much rather wait the hour and take the upgrade, I think, if I had to.
I'm with you there. I other than the sleep part, I wish I could sleep on flights. I can't. And when you travel for a living, it makes it rather difficult.
Oh, I hear you.
There you have it, gang. We want to thank Dominic for coming on the show and talking to us. You can join us on the THP forum to discuss and debate everything we talked about here. And of course, follow along on Twitter at THP Golf and at The Domino. Don't forget to head over to iTunes and subscribe to The Hacker's Paradise so you never miss a new episode of The Golf Industry Uncut, The Dean Has Spoken, or On the Tee Box. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes with what your favorite THP radio show is. So for myself and of course Dominic, we hope you enjoyed this new episode of The Golf Industry Uncut. Bye, everybody.
THP Radio on the Hackers Paradise Podcast Network. Your #1 source for all things golf. Subscribe on iTunes to never miss an episode.